up to you how you set up your screen. Rachel, should I just begin?
Yeah, go for it, Ruth.
Okay.
We're in your safe hands.
It's fantastic to see everybody here. And Rachel, we're going to be spotlighting you very shortly, but it just falls to me on behalf of the whole Iona community to welcome all of you here, and particularly on behalf of Camas and all that have been to Camas and all who will eventually go to Camas for different reasons, to say welcome to all of you. We are here for this amazing event to launch Down the Track. I hope you've got sight of somewhere your copy. We're going to have a little word from Rachel towards the beginning, and then various writers are going to speak to us about different aspects of life at Camas, and we'll finish within 90 minutes in total. So sit back, relax and enjoy yourselves. Just a few words of introduction from me. It's just a great privilege to be here amongst all of you, some of you who've been going to Camas for decades and some who've maybe been more recently. I was lucky enough to be at Camas just last Friday, just for the day, but what a glorious day it was last Friday. And I was reminded of the utter beauty of the bay beckoning us down that track, to be still, beckoning us to be close, to take care of one another, to push our boundaries and discover new potential. That journey down the track never ceases to thrill. I was reminded of the garden at this spring turning point, ready to burst into life, into new life. The children who were there were scrambling like gorgeous crabs across the granite rocks, while the dog Ralph didn't want to miss out and was knee-high in the ocean beside them. We had Davy's bread for lunch, and we had that communal carrot soup, which filled us up. And the music over the washing up was just as good as ever. We know that Camas can also be cold, and it can be wet, and it can be dark. But as we all know, the people who walk down the track week in, week out, to be met currently by Tom and the team of adventurers, will be sure, whatever the weather, of a radical welcome. And by that I mean a welcome that will signal to the receiver and to the giver that we will all be changed here at this radical place that we call Camas. So, Rachel, you have done quite a remarkable thing in gathering together 76 screens here at the moment. There will be more. So well done, Rachel. But you have done the most amazing thing in bringing together over 100 writers into this collection. And I think before we go any further, can we all just unmute ourselves and give Rachel McCann a huge big round of applause? And I'm going to put you right in the middle here, Rachel. We want to say a huge thank you to you for everything you've done to bring this book.
Yay, go Rachel, yay!
Thanks,
Rachel, I'm going to join you in the spotlight. Let me get back and we'll be together on the screen. I've just got a couple of questions to ask you. Here we are. Thank you.
No, that won't be necessary.
You might want to mute yourselves, folk, if you're able to do that. And I'm going to just ask Rachel a couple of questions to get us started. Let me find my questions, Rachel. Here we go. So I don't know, Rachel, I was trying to think how many times you yourself might have been to Camas over the years down the track. I wondered if you could tell us about your very first visit or a very early visit to Camas. What took you there and what was the impact that visit had on you?
Thanks, Ruth, and thanks for that lovely, what you said in the introduction is beautiful. Funnily enough, I didn't really like Camas when I first went there, which was actually 25 years ago, this last month, which made me feel quite old. But I, had a background in youth work, but, I grew up in quite an urban working class sort of area. And so Camas, I mean, in some ways, perhaps like some of the young people would go, Camas was pretty out of my comfort zone. And it rained, the first time I went there, it rained all day. So it took me a while to get into the comfort zone. But I had, I remember I had the privilege of working with Ross and Karen Morton, who many people know, good friends of yours, Ruth, as well, who were very much into the outdoors. And were wonderful, really, in teaching me and other young volunteers about that. I remember Karen getting us to taste different herbal teas with our eyes closed. So to me at the time, that was just like, what is this drink with bits of leaf in? But of course, you know, it was a wonderful transformational experience. It's where I learned to garden, I learned to plant trees. And it was, you know, my passion for youth work and creating spaces, safe spaces for young people, I felt fitted really right in with Camas, which once I got over my urban sensibilities, I really began to enjoy it. And it was a privilege, you know, it's a real privilege to be there as a volunteer and then as a staff member many years ago.
I suppose the question is, what kept you coming back then if it was such a challenging experience? But
Yes.
clearly there was something about it that drew you back again and again.
Yeah, and I think for me it's very, very much seeing what happens there in the sense of community. One of the things in the book that came through very strongly was how important that sense of community is, and that perhaps that's something that perhaps makes Camas unique. I'll be interested to see what sort of Tom and the team think about that. But that the emphasis on relationships, the emphasis on belonging, the emphasis on, you know, acceptance and love, that was very powerful for me, both as a young volunteer and to facilitate for young people who had not had necessarily good experiences around relationships or belonging or a community. And that's the thing, I think that vision of that, I think is perhaps relatively unique and remains strong, I think, today.
And that leads me to my next question, which was about the young people that you met coming down the track. You talked about relationships and belonging, and I guess also just knowing that you were going to be cared for in a compassionate way, entering a compassionate space. The book is full of remarkable stories about remarkable people. Is there one person or one group that you met at Camas whose experience sums up some of those things that Camas means so much to you? One to give us a kind of a flavour of the actual people whose lives you encountered while at Camas, maybe sum up that Camas experience.
Yeah, and for me, you know, it's always a privilege to do that. Even in recent years, if I've gone up to help out for a week, or you know, to cook for staff training and to meet the volunteers who go, or some of the groups who are there, it's always a huge privilege, really. And I always find myself learning a lot. I think when I was there, I'd qualified as a social worker, and my social work placement was with Kibble Education and Care Centre, which is a residential school in Paisley for young people who are at risk and are vulnerable in many ways. And I'd worked there for 6 months in my placement, and it had been a wonderful experience. So once I became, a few years later, I became Camas coordinator. I invited them to come, which was a risk for both parties. You know, it was a challenge for them and it was a challenge for us. But it worked wonderfully. I mean, I had one of the things that comes out in the book as well as the role of group leaders who bring young people to Camas, and how, you know, that dedication and that skill of what must be at times a tiring week. I only did it once as a group leader and it was tiring, but you know, that dedication to create those opportunities, give those opportunities to people, to prepare them, to follow them up afterwards. I don't think that can be underestimated. But we had a wonderful, in the 2-3 years I was there, we had wonderful weeks with the young people from Kibble, and that was a relationship that lasted 10 years. There's a lovely story in the book about when Dr. Stewart was coordinator, and the young people from Kibble were there. And one particular young man who was not going to come and took quite a lot of persuading. And one of the things he had a strong attachment to was his bike. And he insisted that he was not going to go to Camas without his bike. And as I say, the staff were wonderful. Okay, you know, they're packing all this stuff up, and I managed to fit the bike into the van as well. Now, it was interesting because this bike lay at the bottom of the track unused for the entire week because he was so present to what was happening. I mean, you know, all the people who worked at Camas will have seen that time and again. There's so much going on, and there's a little quote in the book from him that says, "I wasn't going to come as I didn't want to be without my PlayStation and TV and bike. But you realise you can live without them. There's loads to do, and it's not scary either. Everyone is really nice." That's always, you know.
Yeah. And you've said those two words that really strike me in what you've just said are risk and present. That the risk he took to come down the track without all of his props and his essentials was great, but also he didn't need that particular bike because he was fully present in the moment. And I think, you know, that for me sums up what Camus is also about. Rachel, we're going to hand over in a moment to Kathy, who's going to give us a kind of an overview of Camus and some further stories. But I wondered, before we do that, if you've got a message to the Camus staff who are here, and more widely to the Iona community, as you know, Camus is about to welcome, they're in the middle of staff training right now, but there'll be loads of young folk coming down the track this season. What would your message be to the Camus staff to get them through this season?
Well, I'm just always grateful they let this old timer come up and hang out, really. But no, I mean, again, you know, it's a privilege. It's the dedication and the skill and the hours they do and the enthusiasm that they manage to maintain every single week. It's just a privilege to watch. And
Sure.
you know, I think it's John Lloyd used a phrase in the book about radical hospitality. Yeah. And you know, coming to Camus, being on the Camus committee for the last, I was on for about 7 years, and coming with different staff changes, and just seeing that complete love, really. It's love that they pour out. I think you said that, Ruth, in the book, that the love that they pour out for the young people and for the place is wonderful. So I think just keep on doing what they're doing, really, and, and look after each other. I think that's really, you know, amongst the stress, it can be challenging, and to look after each other and to encourage people to, you know, to encourage people to have a go. I think that goes for the young people and the staff, really, to support and encourage people and build that community with each other, I think.
Brilliant. I know that will resonate with the staff. I was there on Friday and they were looking at the values, and they were very clear. The one value that the two groups that were working together both agreed on was that Camus needs to exude love. Nothing more, not watering it down to love and affection, but love. And you've just reiterated that, Rachel, and to look after yourselves and the groups that come down the track. Rachel, thank you so much. I think we just need to give Rachel another round of applause for all the work she's done to support and to produce this amazing book. Thank you so much.
Can I just say a quick thank you to everyone who contributed and everyone who has come tonight, and all the support from it. I really appreciate it. It's actually, next year will be 80 years since George MacLeod took on the license for Camus, and the fact that we're all still here celebrating is something, really. So thanks, Ruth.
We'll have to have a party, and Rachel, we'll bring you back in towards the end. There'll be times for comments and questions and so on, and you'll be here for that. But for now, we're going to unspotlight both Rachel and me, and I'm going to welcome Kathy Galloway onto the screen, who's going to give us an overview of Camus. Over to you, Kathy.
Thank you, Ruth. The first thing I would like to say is that I think this is a wonderful book, and in terms of an overview, the very best overview you can get of Camus actually is by reading the book, just seeing that from so many different angles. But I just want to start off with reading a couple of bits of poetry written by Jan Such Pickard, who has done a great introduction to the history of Camus, which goes back actually a very long way. She describes how a piece of Mesolithic slate was discovered at Camus some years ago, and the long history of the people and the land. So this is from Work in Progress by Jan, just a little bit of it. At Camus Tuath on Mull, the quarrymen's homes, built of the stone they hewed out, are roofed with big slates, sea grey, set with gold from Cullerpool on Ling. Granite calls to slate, telling stories of hard graft and human community. And from Quarry, Query, only these cottages, built as firm as a fortress, facing the quarry across the bay, where generations have lived and laboured and died, working the hill for the red rock, working the waves for the salmon, where string nets catch air and light, and fish are gutted on the stone, meals made, fires kindled, words and silences shared. Iona is famous for its association with saints and monks, and I have nothing in particular against saints and monks, although I'm never going to be either of them. But one of the things that I've always really appreciated about Camas is that it is a place where very ordinary people have made community, have wrestled a living from a hard land, and from a hard history as well. Fishers for for centuries, quarriers, growers and planters of many things, and done so in a part of Scotland that has a hard history of dispossession and clearance. And so, as well as the natural landscape of Camas, one of the things that you get a really strong sense of is the history and culture. And I think that even if people are not aware of these, that communicates itself, that there's a long relationship between the people and the land at Camas. And as Rachel said, George MacLeod, nearly 80 years ago, saw that Camas was a place that would be good to take a particular group of fairly marginalized people who had very little experience of living in a natural, a rural environment, groups of young men who were in the custody of the justice system. So the first groups of people who built community at Camas were these young men, and for many of them, this was an experience and a relationship with place that lasted a lifetime. And then gradually, over the years, the constituency changed and expanded. Social work groups came, school groups came, groups from every kind of background came, of young people. And alongside that, Camas developed its own resident community, small community, sometimes just 2 or 3 people. And I think there were a couple of occasions where John Lloyd was the Camas community entirely on his own, with some visitors for a couple of winters. But gradually a community formed at Camas, and it's great to see on the screen so many people that have been part of the Camas community, the resident group at Camas and the volunteers at Camas over these, well, maybe not 80 years now, but for a long time. And one of the things about Camas is that it's just gone on with its own life. And it's been part of the Iona community, but people used to talk about Camas as the Iona community's best kept secret. And there have been times, I think, not now, but there have been times in the past where the community, I think, didn't always value the huge gift that Camas is. Camas, the place itself, actually still belongs to the Duke of Argyll, in spite of our varied attempts to buy it from him. But we have been very glad to have been able to rent the place from him for these years. And in more recent years, the constituencies, the groups that have come to Camas have not just been young people, still very predominantly young people, but also groups of refugees and asylum seekers, ex-prisoners, people who live without a secure home, people who are ex-military, and just people who have come to plant trees, to help with the garden, and to enjoy some rest, recreation, and particularly life in a different kind of community. And I think through all of that, the building of community in this place that really helps people to get much clearer about the difference between our needs and our wants. Because at Camas, almost nobody has what they want, or what we have come to think of as what we want. You know, electricity, so many things. I mean, not just bikes, but the things that people have had to lay aside to come to Camas, not being able to use their phones, so many things like that. But often people find that although they don't have everything they want, Camas meets everyone's needs. The need for warmth, the need for nutritious food, for beauty, which is a real human need, and above all for community and acceptance, and as everyone else has said, of love. And I'm sure that everyone who is on this Zoom is here because at some point they have loved Camas. That's a very fast overview. Thank you.
Oh, Kathy, thank you so much.
Read the book.
Read the book,
Yep.
And get yourself down the track if you have not done so already. That's fantastic. We're going to move on now. Just to give you a sense of how we're going to move, we're going to hear now from folks from the GK Experience. And if we can just switch the spotlight and bring the GK Experience screen on here. But before we hand over to you guys, hello GK, nice to see you all.
Hi.
Just want to say that after this, we're going to hear from Sarah. So you've got 10 minutes, folks, and then 10 minutes from Sarah. And then we're going to put you on to wee breakout rooms so that you can all, from the whole Zoom call, share with one another just for 5 minutes or so, something of your experience of Camas and going down that track. But for now, it's over to the GK folk for about 10 minutes. Do you want me to give you a wee warning, or are you going to time it yourselves, folks?
We'll time it.
You'll be fine.
Great. I can manage 10 minutes. Or... Okay. Oh, that's not very loud. So that song was just to bring back a bit of an experience for all of the Camas staff there, because I think we tormented them with that song last year. So yeah, we're the GK Experience. We're based in Glasgow. Work with young people and taking them to Camas for, well, at least 10 years. And I'm going to not really talk very much right now. I'm just going to hand over. We've got a small group assembled behind, as you can see, causing mayhem as usual. And we're first going to hear from John and Hutchie, who I said I wasn't going to introduce. They were going to do it themselves, but I've just done it. But here we go anyway.
Hi everyone, I'm Hutchie. I'm a youth worker with the GK Experience, and this is
John, and I'm the GK Experience.
We're going to talk a little bit about the Camas Challenge, which is one of the highlights we do when we're there. First of all, John, do you want to tell everybody when the Camas Challenge is?
So the Camas Challenge is our last night at Camas, and it is pretty much a highlight. It's just celebrating our week there, and kind of gives the Camas team a bit of a break for that night and that afternoon.
And who is involved in the Camas?
So the people that are involved is the young people that are there and the volunteers that bring young people, so they'll kind of get involved with the different groups. So we split them up into 4 different groups.
Cool. And how about you tell everybody what the Camas Challenge is?
So the Camas Challenge consists of 4 different key areas, which the first area is our afternoon activities. So can be abseiling and what else? Coast steering. And then the decoration. So one decoration I remember was, it kind of can be at the dinner. So we'd done impressions. So everybody had an impression they had to do while sitting at the table. I remember some had to do a Gordon Ramsay impression, a Scouse impression, and all different sorts. Then you've got the reflection, which is either housed in the chapel, or it's held sometimes. The last night was held at the campfire, what I remember. And then the entertainment part, which can also be held at the campfire. We also done a disco where there was all sorts of glow sticks and all sorts of lights, flashing lights.
And what about the reflection part we do? Going to go for about the progress that we do through the trip and how they do this.
So at the start, everybody thinks, oh, the reflection, what is this? I don't want to do it. And then they kind of start to, as the days progress, they want to talk about what they've been doing throughout the day and what they've looked for, what they're looking forward to throughout the week, and what they enjoyed the most about that day.
I do. Yeah, just a little snippet of what we get up to over there. John and I are going to pass over to Courtney and Cal behind us, just to let them catch up with you a bit more.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Cal. I'm the other youth worker at GK, along with Hutchie and John. And this is...
I'm a young leader at GK.
So me and Courtney are probably quite different to some other people. We've had an unusual experience at Camas, haven't we? Which happened last summer, where we went up to Camas in June, I think, and we were kind of one of the first groups to go back after COVID, and we had a 3-week stay extended, not by choice, but it was a great time, wasn't it? So, Courtney, how was that for you? Like, it was obviously a bit kind of...
It was good. It was hard at points, I think, like not knowing when you were going to get home and you'll be able to keep in touch with your family. But I learned a lot. What
would you say you learned about yourself when you were up there?
To deal with things, you can't.
But and because of that, you said that you actually grew from the experience, didn't you? You learned a lot about yourself and about everybody else. And it's fair to say that after the 3 weeks, when we were going home, eventually when we were allowed to go home, that you actually said to me that I actually don't really want to go home. You wanted to stay. Yeah. And why was it you wanted to stay? There was a couple of reasons you said to me.
The stuff you get to do up there, and the volunteers, they make it enjoyable.
Yeah. So I think we found that in like the face of adversity, the kind of staff team and the volunteers that were up there were pretty amazing, and they kept everybody's spirits high, and that's kind of what we think of when we go to Camas, is the kind of the community aspect, and as somebody else said, the kind of love that's up there. Courtney, have you got any kind of funny memories from that trip? There was a couple that you said that there was, I think there's one of the staff members up there just now did some yoga with us.
Aye, Davey and his yoga was something else. Go steering, playing football with Brendan and that.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed doing all that.
Yeah. So that's our kind of lasting memories from Camas from last year, and we hope to come back this year. Right. Thanks very much.
So I'm going to speak with this man here. Who is this?
Hello, my name's Jordan. I'm a blue hoodie, so I'm a leader. GK.
And Jordan, when did you first come to Camas?
I first came to Camas in 2013 when I was just a young person. Originally I was meant to go to Iona, but GK felt like I was more suitable for Camas, so I went to Camas in 2013.
And what did you think of Camas when you first got there at that time? Do you remember it?
When I first got there, I just thought, where are we? Because the trail was obviously in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, it was a 20-25 minute walk for me to get to Camas. So I was like, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where we are. I was a bit confused, more than worried or anything like that. But when we walked the path, the the scenery was amazing as you were walking through it. There's also a trail right to Camas. Beautiful scenery and stuff like that. It was a sunny day as well, so it was a beautiful day. And then finally got down to the track, and then the sea was in, so it was beautiful, and it was absolutely amazing when I first seen it.
And how do you have any particular stories from your times at Camas?
I've been 5 times to Camas. But I've probably got 2 favourite stories. One of them is talking to someone called Barry, who I don't know if he still volunteers, if he does or not. But Barry was a very good like somebody who would give you good advice and stuff like that. He would always give you advice. He would always help you and stuff like that. And it was good just talking to him. He'd give you some tips on life or just certain activities that you aren't too sure about. And my second favourite story would have to be is what the leader says about the Camas challenge. Obviously, there's a wee bit of entertainment involved in that too, and I done the Queen's speech, so I would impersonate the Queen, write a speech, and actually impersonate the Queen and be like, "Hello, my name." I was the Queen, of course, but it was good.
It is the stuff of legend. It is absolutely stuff of legend. Everyone talks about it still. You said to me earlier when we were chatting about this, something that you really liked about Camas, and you came out of an absolute nugget.
Yeah, so the one thing I loved about Camas is there's no electricity, there's no internet, there's no social media, so you're away from all of that and your mind becomes free, like your mind becomes empty when there's not no internet or social media. You feel like you can do a lot more, so that's what I thought really helped me, is I can actually get a bit of brain space away from electricity and social media and stuff like that.
And you find that you can kind of interact more with people?
Yeah, actually, I feel like I got to know people a lot better just by chatting to them, because obviously nowadays you don't really get that. It's usually social media, so it felt good to just get rid of that guard and actually speak to people in person.
Amazing. Thank you, Jordan. It's fair to say that when GK comes to Camas, it's usually a bit of a riot in a number of different ways. Often one of the largest groups that goes, and we definitely leave our mark where we go, but I don't know if Camas would change it, but we certainly wouldn't, and we just love going back to Camas. It works so well for the young people that we take there, that opportunity, as Jordan said, to just have that time and space together, to get to know themselves and each other, and we're just really pleased to be really well associated with Camas and look forward to many years ahead, and really delighted about this book as well. It's great.
Oh, thank you so much, everybody from GK. That was just tremendous. And I know particularly Cal and Caitlin, your forbearance when you had COVID last year was commendable, so well done. And you know what, I want to commend you all. Your choreography tonight was remarkable. You clearly rehearsed that, who was coming in and out of the screen, and well done. And
we also have a hop along as well.
Oh, you don't even.
And you also were all, I love the fact that you're all wearing your corporate identity. You got that sorted. You've all got your hoodies on, so well done. But fantastic stories, and you are Camas. Thank you so much. We'll see you all back there as soon as we can. And thanks for your contributions to the book as well. So, we're going to move now to Sarah, but just before if you bring Sarah onto the screen, that would be great. But just to remind us that after this, we're going to have a very short time in breakout rooms. And that's a chance for you just to catch up with 2 or 3 others to say, what was your Camas experience? And then when we come back from the breakout rooms, this is just giving you a heads up, we're going to have Amira from Create for a wee bit of her input, and then Tom and the Camas team. But for now, it's over to Sarah. Welcome, Sarah Brown. Long association with Camas. Great to have you here.
Thanks, Ruth. Yeah, I was trying to work out how long I've been bringing groups to Camas, and I've certainly been going to Camas for 23 years, and I think it's probably about 18 years I've been taking groups along to the centre. And I was, so people have triggered lots of different memories with me as they've been talking this evening, and one thing that folk haven't mentioned is the journey to get there and what it's like getting on the train to come up, and then the ferry journeys and stuff. And sometimes we went by cars to Oban and took the ferry from there in the bus. But I remember one time getting on the train in Glasgow, and it was so full we couldn't all get seats together. And the kids always liked a bit of banter. So I remember shouting across at one, it goes, "What time do we need to be back on Friday to get your tag sorted?" And without missing a beat, he shouts back 5 o'clock, and then the carriage started to clear a little bit around where we were, and we were able to all get seats together. So there was always good fun with the young people who were just excited to be going someplace. I can think of a few different experiences from young people. At one of the first groups I took, I remember one young man that came with me. He just was always a bit of an underdog and struggled to fit in with where his place in life was. And when he was at Camas, I remember he was doing the Camas challenge and he was in the kitchen, and somebody just paid him a compliment and says, "You're doing a really good job there, well done." And he went on to become a chef as a result of that, because it was the one thing in his life that he'd been given a compliment for. So the little comments that come from taking groups there last a lifetime with young people. And I think I remember being there one day, and this man came down the track with his grandson and said that he used to come to Camas when he was young. And I said, "Oh, did you come with George?" And he says, "No, we came with Dr. MacLeod." And he said that he wanted to bring his grandson to the place that had made the big difference in his life. So it's to see that generationally it passes down as a positive experience. One of the things for me was just the incredible amount of love and care that is given from the staff at Camas. And I think for me, there was no choice of wanting to go anywhere else after experiencing Camas for how much there was an emphasis on coming alongside young people and wanting to know them genuinely. In other places you would be running sessions and you would experience activities, but at Camas you were spending every minute of the day with people, and late into the evenings there didn't seem to be the staff clock off. Even if there was a clock off time, staff often stayed because they were enjoying the company, they loved what they did. And I think for me, I used to host a lot of Camas staff in Glasgow, and then they were always keen to come and see the young people that had been up and find out what was going on with them. So I just think there was something special that travelled beyond Camas that is a lasting legacy. And one group that I took from Castlemilk, we went back to the school and the head teacher was asking about the trip, and I said, "Oh, some comment must have come up about there being no electricity." So she grabs one of the young people that had been and she says, "Is there really no electricity at Camas?" And the young person thought about it and he's like, "Oh, no," and kind of walked off again, but he had no concept that there was no electricity at Camas. It wasn't the first thing when he thought of Camas of what they didn't have. It was all about what they did have. And certainly in Castlemilk, it was a much sought after trip from the young people from the high school to get to come, which is a bit of a rarity for the school chaplain to be popular. So those are some of my stories. I wonder if I'll just read the poem, and then maybe Ruth, if you have any questions that you think would be good to have an answer. So this poem was inspired, actually, I think it was the last time I was at Camas, which was 2019. And I called it "I Carry Hope" because I think that's what comes out of Camas, is that you gain hope for all kinds of situations through that place. Launching hope makes you late for dinner. It makes you walk more slowly, looking up instead of head on. You see things you've never seen before. The pattern of the unseen is what holds hope up there. It's proof that there's more than we know. So I tucked the kite in my bed, worried that hope might get stolen and broken, and it was there when I climbed in with my pyjamas. The next day, as the sun shone and the wind blew, I knew that the time had come, and boy did hope fly. She danced and dived, tugged and dropped, and hands young and old universally understood. For a time I lay sleeping on the beach, hope held in someone else's hands, and then I went to find her. Freedom released into the wildness of the air, whilst on the ground I danced, twisting and turning, rising and falling, the St. Bernard's waltz on the ground with my partner in the sky. From a distance hope could be seen, like a smoke signal, declaring my love in colours bold and bright. The kite didn't fly on Wednesday, a feeling moving inside me, sending me spiralling down like when the wind drops. But hope visited me in cups of tea and in eyes that really looked with love, and soon it was time to move, and the only way was up. I climbed up up, and with the kite in my hand and then in my backpack, I scrambled and feared I would never go up or down, but be stuck in this halfway point that made me tired and dizzy and wishing I'd never brought others to this place. Then the sky was calling to me, and the sea too, and the adventure of travelling a path I had long avoided. Hope waited at the top, resting, but watching, ready to move, but giving enough string for me to come into my own flight, and through the movement I was born for, not the stationary paralysis built by fear, but the climbing through past memories that haunt me, I reached paradise. The water was turquoise and sparkling like an Aladdin's cave dropped in the ocean, and as far from all the things in our lives that steal hope like a thief in the night, we were all free in living out hope. There was swimming and climbing and snoozing and chatting. There was feasting on loaves baked with love and loaded with bananas and chocolate. And not one of us was anywhere but in that moment. Hope lived there as the kite flew at her highest. She'd other places to take us, for as we filled with our own hope and this true joy, she went higher still, calling to somewhere new.
Sarah, that's just a remarkable offering, the stories, but also the poem. I guess meditation, reflection, prayer are words. And I guess if I have a question for you, Sarah, it's about, you're a woman of faith, you're a chaplain, and I'm really glad to know that Camas can give chaplains street cred. I think we need to get that as a commendation for our website. But Camas is part of the wider Iona community, but sits lightly to God talk and to religion. What hope can we give to the world through a place like Camas? A hope that's rooted in faith, but not rooted in or bound by religious trappings.
I mean, you've maybe just answered it in your question. It's the fact that you can see faith, hope and love in the way people live. So you don't need the book because the book's been lived out. And young people know that, adults know it. And I think I've rarely met a person who hasn't gone to Camas and just understood what the hospitality of God is because they've felt it. And I just think it's, if you can't see it there, you're probably not seeing it in the Bible either.
Okay, yeah. So we shouldn't get too worried about, being particular or deliberate about our faith expressions. We should just keep living the life of the spirit close to the earth, close to each other, close to relationship.
Yeah, and I think the combination of the people who come together, those questions are asked and answered in the way people live their lives. So there'll be plenty of people that come to Camas that kind of wonder what me as a minister was doing with a bunch of young people, and those stories and lives would grow from those questions because you're in a safe place to ask them. So and I think it's not about going with a mission to change people, it's about going to learn from each other, and that has a life of its own.
Sure. Sarah, thank you so much. That's fantastic and a lovely, amazing contribution. And I know you've been coming and bringing people to Camas for years. Thank you for all that you're doing to support the centre and the young people that come through the centre. Folks, we're going to move into breakout rooms. I think if we give ourselves till, let me just look at my, just about, let's just say till 5:02, so about 8 minutes, Iona, if we can set them up for about 8 minutes. And then when we come back, Amira, just to give you a heads up, you're on for a bit of input from Create, and then it's going to be Tom and the team from Camas, followed by Mary and Maeve, a double act. And then there's any time we've got left after that, we'll have some time for questions and we'll wrap up at 1:30. So for now, it's over into breakout.
Organise things at Camas, yeah.
You didn't ever seem to stop working.
Stories.
No, you never stop working, no.
Well, we need to get you guys together again and get you recording some stories. So watch this space. For now, we're going to move on to hear some words and reflections from Amira from Create. Amira, you're the director of Create, is that right? And we're going to hear you and some of the young folk share a bit about your experiences at Camas.
Lovely, thank
So
you.
over to Amira and
Great, can you hear us okay first? Just a thumbs up that you can hear us okay. That's great. I'm Amira Fletcher. I am the director of Create. I feel a bit of a newbie, and I was going to ask if at some point we can get Rob on, if he can unmute, because Rob was a founding director of Create and contributes to the book. And
you want Rob on now with you on the screen?
Well, yeah, I'll hand over to him in a minute, and I'm sure he'll join in. With me, there he is. Yeah, perfect. I've got Kira, who's one of our youth workers, Lewis and Amy, who are two of our young people who are now working and at college. Adults, they're actually adults, correct. I just wanted to talk a little bit about my experience. I feel a bit of a newbie, and Create has got like a nearly 20-year relationship with Camas, and you know, reading the book, and when I talk about Create, I talk about, you know, we talk about faith, change and community, and you know, it feels like the DNA of Camas is in Create, and we take our young people away, and we tend to not tell them too much about what it's going to be like. And my experience was the Camas team was so fantastic in accommodating. I took my family with the youth work team because I really wanted to experience Camas. They were like, no, you need to come. And my son, we take the secondary club, that age group, and my son came along. And the thing that sticks out for me, and there's so many things, getting stuff done. That was amazing. That's great. Getting jobs done and taking that home stuck in my family life and sticks with Create, you know, having the food together. But I wanted to just share a little story of when we went down to, yes, it did rain a lot, but we went on this day walk to Market Beach with some young girls who I'd been working with at club. And we did this really long work. One of the girls just kept walking with me all the way alongside, and it stuck in my mind because we talk about what we're doing as youth workers is being alongside the young people to go on their journey with them, but she was determined to stick with me because I was having problems with my hips and I couldn't walk along very well, and she stuck with me, and we got to the beach, and the sun came out and it was beautiful, and all the girls got in the water, and there was just this freedom and this beauty of them being free. And one of the girls just turned around to me and said, I feel like Moana. And they were in the water, it was freezing, and they were in the water in the sunshine, and didn't want to get out. And eventually, you know, the Camas stuff were like, you know, you really need to get out now. And they produced this hot chocolate, and I was like, how have they carried that? And then in typical kind of Create style, there was this beautiful moment that then went into chaos. Somebody cut their foot, and we were all trying to work out how to get them back. You were there, Kira.
Mm-hmm.
One of the Camas staff carried this young person all the way back to get her home safe and calmed it all down. And I don't know, for me, that freedom and that love and that care sums up Camas for me. You two, are you going to share?
Yeah.
Go on.
I think one of the things that, well, one of my memories really is all the games that we did at Camas. We were all brought together, kind of like we were made to be brought together, but at the same time we wanted to be together. And a lot of the time when we were at a club, it was like, I'm not going near them people, these people aren't going near each other. But when we were at Camas and we were playing these games, we were all together, like the Mafia game and Sniper. It was really bizarre to be like that with each other. For like people to be like, I really hate this person, and then be sat next to them, being this character playing Mafia with some bizarre sort of voice going on.
It was great, Amy. Thank you. Lewis, you're gonna...
Well, one thing that mainly sticks out for me is it was a really nice week at Camas. So I was sat on the wall. I was working on this drawing for ages, and it was the year that Amira's son was around, and he brought a chicken over and he dropped one of the chickens on the drawing. So now my drawing of my dragon that took a good couple of weeks has the signature of a chicken. It's kind of just like a reminder of the week at Camas.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Kira?
Yeah, I think mine's more of after, and then actually at Camas. I think going to Camas as a young person and then going as an adult, as a youth worker, with the same company I went with as a young person. I think when you get back, I think you realise how, you know, I think when you're doing youth club, like youth groups and stuff like that, you have this youth work head on you. But then when you're at Camas, you kind of show that vulnerable side to yourself, which I think the young people appreciate a bit more, because you are stuck in the middle of nowhere with 20 young people. So
thank you. Yeah. And Rob, I just wanted to bring you in because you were instrumental in getting me into Cray, and I loved reading your piece in the book about the shed, and I learned a little bit, but I'd love to just hand over it to you at the end of our little bit now, if that's okay.
Well, thanks, Amira. Yeah, it's just great to hear the stories. But also, Sandy, I think it was in your house in New Year 2020 for a party. Just realised when I saw you speaking then, it feels like a long way away. I'm down here in Wales, but I guess that was one of my first thoughts when I first went to Camas, that felt like quite an outsider, partly because I was English, but also because it was such a long way away, and it's been incredible to keep this relationship with the place, really, even though we're so far away. The first person I met when I went down to Camas with Katie and Tom, actually, nearly 20 years ago, was Liz, who was the gardener at the time. And I think, if you like, my and our relationship with Camas changed, actually, when Liz asked me to, if I'd help her build a shed. And Kathy's just messaged me about her hut. And that was when I started doing work at Camas and building things. So we sort of did this double thing of taking young people in their season, if you like, in the summer, like a lot of other groups did. But I started going up in the winter with young people, building usually huts. And I think that was, that was because I'd really been inspired by George MacLeod's idea of combining work, the monastic principles, really, which we set up Create on, of work, sharing food together, and prayer and reflection. And sharing those things together is how you build community. And so I was inspired by that years ago, and it was wonderful to be able to live that out in practice at Camas, and actually on Iona as well with the beach hut, and take young people up there to build things. But what was important, as I was always reminded me by my wonderful colleague Johnny Aiken, who's still involved with Create, is Rob, but we need to have fun. We must have fun as well. And so I think, to me, everything that we did at Camas, whether we were building stuff or whether we were washing up or whatever we were doing, you had to have fun when you're doing it. I think that was really important. So I've had so much good times building stuff at Camas, usually sheds, usually huts, but other things as well. A few weeks ago, a pirate ship. And it's just always been such a good time, and it works, I think, as you said, Amira, getting stuff done, doing jobs together, sharing food together, sharing reflection together, and having fun doing all of those things together is what community is all about. And I've had such a great time being connected with the place, even though we're a long way away physically.
Rob and Amira and everybody at Create, thank you so much. And for all those who've ever lived in one of the Camas sheds, Rob, a particular thanks to you as well. Folks, don't forget, you can get all these stories and more in Down the Track. The book is available now from any good retailer, or ideally from Wild Goose Publications. So please do have a look for the book and can I speak? More of the stories. So folks, we're going to say thanks again to Create. That was fantastic. Just, I love all the stories and getting stuff done. It's a key experience at Camas. And we're now going to hand over to Tom and the team for a short time of reflection from yourselves about Camas today, And then we're going to hear from Maeve and Mary before we wrap up for the session. So Tom and the team, over to you.
Run from speaking again, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hello, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Good, thank you. So yeah, you're going to hear a little bit from myself as CAMHS coordinator, a little bit from Ailey, who's one of our volunteers this year, and a little bit from Davey as well, who's part of the resident team. I just thought I'd say a little bit about CAMHS over the past couple of years, but first, a huge thank you to Rachel for putting this collection of stories and history of CAMHS together. I've not read it all yet. A couple of people have, and it's really inspiring and really great to hear more about the history, and it's certainly improved the quality of our first night reflections, or at least the accuracy of them. So thank you for that, Rachel. I arrived here with my wife Rachel and our 2 children at the start of 2020, around the same time as COVID at CAMHS, and it's been a strange couple of years. I think I've really benefited from having quite a long history with CAMHS as a group leader and as a volunteer in the past, because that's really helped carry the mood through, and our deep love for CAMHS has really helped keep us afloat in what's been a difficult couple of years at times. But aside from that as well, I think CAMHS has really managed to survive and thrive in some ways because of the deep love that people have for the place, whether that's the groups that have been so keen to come, even in difficult circumstances, and have been so keen to come back this year, or whether it's the staff teams over the past 2 years that have really gone above and beyond to make the place accommodating, and that sort of radical hospitality that people have talked about, keeping that alive here over the past 2 years, when we've had a lot of challenging restrictions in place and challenging times, as we have right now with 2 of our team having to be separated from the rest of the community. But we're always keeping those principles of CAMHS in place and working our hardest to make sure everyone feels loved and part of the community here during their stay. And I really feel like the foundations of CAMHS and what's important to CAMHS have survived and continues to survive. And we've had a few people visit over the past couple of years that have said a lot of the things about CAMHS might have changed, although certainly a bunch of the cooking equipment is still the same as it was 30 years ago. But despite the changes, it feels very much like the same place. And that really is down to the work and the history and culture of the place and the staff that keep that alive. So yeah, it's been a challenging couple of years, but it's also been great to be here. I think it'd be good for me to hear from the other guys as well. So I'm going to hand you over to Amy. That's all right. Yeah.
Hello. Hi, I hope you are all well. My name's Ailey. I'm one of the volunteers this year for CAMHS, which I'm pretty buzzing about, as I'm pretty sure all of us are. How I started here was I'm a youth worker in Glasgow at St Paul's, and we have a very special connection to CAMHS in a lot of ways because we tend to steal a lot of their staff and then they tend to steal some of ours. So that's the kind of relationship that we have, and fortunately this year I was able to be a part of the CAMHS volunteer staff team, which is great. I took a group here in 2019 before all the COVID stuff happened, so we got to experience everything, and it was just one of the best things. Like a few of you have said before, this was the coveted trip for our youth group. They loved it. They would fight each other to make sure they got a space in it, and they always came with great banter and lots of good stories. So it really made monumental memories for them. This week we have been training as a staff team. So we've met loads of new faces, we've got to know each other, we've been doing some training with Ruth around conflicts, we've had visitors like Rosie, her husband, and Idris. So it's been a very full-on week. We were having a little chat last night about what the different things of being a CAMHS volunteer, or even just staff and residents residence kind of entails for us, and why we're here, why we want to be here, the type of work that this impacts on other people and how it affects us. So I'm going to share a little bit with you now. Some of the words that we spoke about to do with Camus, it's funny, there's always great laughs, lots of banter, quite a few broken things as well from a lot of youth groups, particularly St Paul's. We've broken a few windows and a couple of doors here and there over the years. We love reflections. They're a really good way to get in touch with ourselves and also to learn about other people, the young people that we work with as well. And that can be a really great connector, even though it sometimes feels a bit out of the ordinary and a bit out of your comfort zone. I'm sure loads of you who have done it the first time, you've got this, oh God, I need to talk about me. But it is a really wonderful thing, and it's a great way of connecting with each other. They said that it can be all consuming at times, like it's a lot of hard work and it's long hours and long days for us as well as the people who come here. So it just means a lot that we all try and give our best and we're all there to support each other, which leads me on to the wholesomeness. Camus is like a little family, and my work in particular is a lot like that too, which is why I decided to work here. We look out for one another. If some of us are ill, we try and do our best to make sure that they're okay and they're still involved. We help each other do dishes and have great singing battles while we're doing it, as I'm sure Ruth can attest to. We help cook meals, we teach each other new things. It's a great overall learning experience, and all of us are incredibly grateful to be here. So thanks for having us on, and I'll pass you over to the lovely Dave. Bye. Also, hot water bottles are a must at Camus. Oh, of course,
Hello, so I am Davey. I've been at Camus quite a few times now. I first came up with the GT Experience guys, so it was nice to see some of those faces on the Zoom call. I have volunteered at Camus and then volunteered again, and partway through that season became a resident staff member, and now this summer I am back as a proper resident staff member, so that's good fun. I suspect that each and every time that I've come up to Camus, my view of what it is and what it can do for people has changed and evolved just a little bit, and I'm pretty certain that probably in future years that will continue to change and evolve, and actually I really hope it does. I was probably in quite a privileged position to be reading the book that Rachel's put together, and I've brought a prop just in case you didn't know what it looked like, Rachel's book. Plug it again. So I was in quite a privileged position to be reading Rachel's book just in the months before I came up here, so I'm sure that a number of you were reading it and kind of thinking, oh, I wish I was at Camus, or that you were wanting to go up to Camus. And actually one of my sincere hopes is that people will read it and then go to Camus for the first time. But I was reading it and I was getting excited about Camus, and it was really helping me think about how I view Camus and what it can do for people. And two of the things that really jumped out for me are that Camus is definitely quite a radical place, and also that Camus is very much on purpose. So for the second of those things, I think initially I thought of Camus almost like a place where you had people that had to build a lighthouse, so they had to build this place first, and then some fisher people came across and lived here, and then George MacLeod saw it somewhere and he thought this would be a good place for young people. And I think when I first came across that story, it seemed a bit rushed and accidental, whereas I really, really get the sense from the book and the stories that it contains that actually a lot of the things that I love most about Camus have very, very intentionally and carefully been put there by the people who have come here and lived here and been around here. So a lot of that is most evident in some of the chat of the stuff like the woodlands. I know that there was some woodlands that was planted, I think about 20 years ago up at the back of the garden. And I remember when one of the guys that was involved in that came down, he was just mesmerised by the size of these trees. I know that a few years ago, Abby, who I know is on the call, and a few others headed up planting the new woodlands up at the back. And actually there's a lot of hope about what the sort of environment that will give for Camus once those trees grow up a wee bit more. They're already doing pretty well, actually. You can also think about other things in the gardens. There's a story in the book about the lazy beds, about establishing those gardens, about producing more food for camas, and also about the polytunnels. I think alongside that, some of the ethos of camas, probably the stuff that's really close to my heart about how it treats people, there's stuff like sharing meals and having time for reflection, and very much that idea of building community through shared experiences and common tasks is definitely not by accident. It's people who have thought and reflected really, really hard on that and realised the power and the potential of those experiences. So that's really lovely, actually, knowing that it's on purpose. It gives you a sense of the power of the place. It puts a wee bit of a pressure on you when you are working here, because you realise how much work's gone into it, and actually you want to continue that, you want to pass it on for future people. And I suppose, yes, and the other thing was how radical camas can be. A couple of folks have mentioned already that idea of radical hospitality. I think that's particularly radical when it's to people who might not normally be given that hospitality, people who might not have had stable homes, or might have been discriminated against or ostracized, or had to travel from somewhere where they really weren't safe, and actually providing that safe space for people is something that I think is just a huge part of camas, and does challenge the idea that you can ever not offer that safe space. At camas, it seems so obvious that that's just what you've got to do. You've got to share your resources. You've got to share what you have. That is so obvious when you're met with people up close. Yeah, so those were the main things I wanted to say, and it's radical in all sorts of other ways. And I suppose for me, the reason that that's important is because it's more than just 1 week at camas, which is good fun. I think fun, as Rob was saying, has huge importance, but actually I think that camas is one of those places that has potential for people to come here to try alternate ideas, to try alternate ways of living and systems of living, and actually to carry that back and expand that within their own communities and lives. So I think that's why that's important. So probably I'll hand back over to Tom at that point. Or to Ruth.
Tom, are you wanting to say and add another wee bit there, or?
No, I'm very happy to hand back over to you, Ruth. Thank you.
That was just incredible. Thank you so much. And I know that every other member of the staff team sitting there could tell some stories too about the radical hospitality and the fun and the on-purpose nature of camas. So thank you, Ailey and Davy and Tom and the whole team. Just before we hand over to Maeve and Mary, just a wee plug here. If you're interested in, if you've been inspired by what you've heard, or you want to know more about how you can get involved at camas, visit the Iona Community website. You'll find the camas page there. And if you're under 35 and you want to be involved in the work of the community, you can join the Young Adults group by visiting that link. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Maeve and Mary to share your reflections on life at camas. Over to you two.
Hi, thank you. So yeah, my name's Maeve. I'm I guess a community kid who went to camas for a week over summer and throughout most of my teens.
Yeah, I'm Mary. Really happy to be here. Similar to Maeve, my parents have been involved in the Iona community for a really long time, and so I went to camas for most of my teenage years as a community kid. And yeah, I really felt like I spent a lot of like my formative years there, which seems strange because we were only ever there for 1 week in the summer. But when I think back to that time in my life, like some of the core memories are ones that I made at camas with people like Maeve. So yeah.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Community Kids Week is when like members of the Iona community go, when they go off on Iona for Community Week, they kind of send their children away to camas for a week. And I remember being quite young, maybe like 8 or 9, and seeing all these old kids going off to camas, and I had to be dragged over to Iona, and I was so jealous. Well, I just wanted to be with the big kids and go to camas. And then eventually it was my turn, and I only spent maybe 3 or 4 Community Kids Weeks at camas, but and you only see these people that you meet there for a week, and then we'd go back home and not see them again for another year. But it was people like Mary and other people who are on this call today, and I kind of you form friendships like no other, really, and they're friendships that you go back to year after year, and nothing's changed. You're still just as good friends. And I remember going home and talking to my friends about this wild place where there's no Wi-Fi, no electricity, and it's the best place ever. And they were like, what are you on about? That sounds horrible. But I was like, then when I explained it, they were all kind of, oh, that sounds really cool, I'm really jealous. And I was like, yeah, I have the coolest summer holidays ever. I get to go to Camas. But yeah, so I wrote a piece I didn't write it for the book, but I wrote a piece when I was 14, so 6 years ago now, when my English teacher asked us to, gave us kind of an assignment to write a piece about your perfect place, and I wrote about Camas. So this is what I wrote when I was 14 years old, so take that as you will. So this is my perfect place. To be woken up by the singing and laughter of my closest friends and family, the bright, crisp sunlight streaming through the open window, a brand new book, crisp and untouched, waits by my bed to be opened, and the story of romance or adventure to be uncovered. The smell of fresh pages overpowered by the saltiness of the sea. This is my perfect place. Memories and good times are created and had, on the sand, on the water, and in the water. Laughter is constant, happiness is constant, and love is constant. Continual clicks that are the sound of some of my happiest moments being preserved within a machine, occasional beeps that are the sound of passing time being recorded, to be remembered and laughed at in future years. This is my perfect place. Shrieks of mirth echo around the isolated building, out into the Atlantic Ocean and up to the deserted quarry as our meal is announced. Up the uneven steps like a herd of elephants, chatting to our heart's content, the prospect of a warm, hearty meal is music to our ears. Cackles, snorts, chortles and giggles are heard from all around. The sense of community is overwhelming. This is my perfect place. A secluded bay on the west coast of Scotland, an occasional dolphin or basking shark out in the teal blue ocean for everyone to marvel. The fear of being stung by a jellyfish when swimming in the salty sea is far outweighed by the fear of not having enough fun with your friends. Meagre fishermen's huts transformed into chaotic dormitories, snug sofas surrounding a cosy wood burner, and a room for you to express yourself in art, but at the same time have friendly matches of table tennis or pool. 2 deserted islands standing out in the bay, sometimes connected to land, sometimes cut off from all people, always a danger. This is my perfect place. Always working together as one to complete a task. From cleaning the toilets to wiping tables to washing up, everything is done as a team. What may seem like a chore or a burden is altered to become a Taylor Swift singing, people splashing, friend making, bad dancing, all-round amazing experience. Cheers and shouts as everyone reaches the top of the vertical cliff face. Support is all around. Every other person is a block, helping you, comforting you, and telling you that you can do it and that it is possible to conquer your fears. This is my perfect place. Long and lively chats lasting well into the night, discussing everything from Harry Potter to Hercules in as much detail as we feel necessary. In-depth deliberations around the dinner table, there is talk of Japan and justice. Cracking a joke as we hike up the treacherous gully over to the sandy white beaches of Market Bay to laugh our nights away under a blanket of stars. This is Camas. This is my perfect place. That was a bit longer than I remember, but even though I wrote that 6 years ago now, kind of reading it back has brought back so many memories, and it still kind of rings true. And yeah, Camas is where I made some of my best friends. I met some of them, I made some of my best memories, and I still do look back at those videos that I took, and those photos are up on my wall in my bedroom. And yeah, it really is a special place.
That was not actually as embarrassing as I thought it was going to be.
No.
Considering you wrote it when you were 14, like she really sold it that she was like, it's going to be so embarrassing to read this. But yeah, all of that rings true for me as well, definitely. I don't have any poetry or anything to share, but I guess I can talk a little bit about like the impact that Camas has had on me, and I guess like the way that it's kind of shaped my life. So yeah, as I said, like I feel like so many of my formative years were spent at Camas in the summer, when really like compiled together, it was really less than 2 months of my life. I turned 23 the other day, so really I think the impact that Camas has had has been completely disproportionate to the rest of my life. But I feel like that's what it does. Like it feels like one small thing, but it's had a ripple effect, and it still has a ripple effect that's still shaping and changing my life, and the things that I do, and the passions I have and things I'm interested in. And I guess when I was thinking about this, I'll preface all of this that like these were not thoughts that I was having when I was 14. When Maeve asked me to do this with her, I had to think. And these are things that I've realised as an adult, like now that I'm reflecting on those times and on that place, that really, yeah, Camas has had such a big impact on my life in kind of three main areas, I guess we'll call it. So in community and how I exist in community and what I think of community, in the outdoors, my love of the outdoors, and in living simply. So those three kind of things that I think for me is what sums up Camas, the kind of holy trinity of what Camas is to me. And yeah, in terms of community, I work in chaplaincy now, so I'm a higher education chaplain. I work at the University Chaplaincy in Manchester, and so much of what I do with my job, I kind of describe it to people as trying to build and facilitate safe spaces and communities. And so much of that, and so much of the way I do that, I think is learned and picked up from the way that community is built and facilitated at Camas, and the way in which you simply just you exist together and you are together, and the way that the staff and the volunteers facilitate that, and how easy it is to live together. Not always easy, but how easy it feels in hindsight sometimes. And trying to build those spaces that for me are deeply spiritual. And I know that Camas for so many people is deeply spiritual, and that's all that kind of thing is what I try and instill into my role. And I feel like Camas has been so key in that. And yeah, so still having an impact on what I do with my career, I guess. And then in terms of the outdoors, like all of the activities we used to do, so kayaking and coasteering and rock climbing and abseiling and all of those kinds of things, and the outdoors and the importance of having outdoor spaces, and having access to outdoor spaces, which I think is one really, really important thing that Camas does, is it gives everybody access to the outdoors, which I know from my background, it's always been a given, but actually that's a really privileged place to be in. And I think the work that it does, the work that you all do in making the outdoors a place for everybody is just wonderful and cannot be underestimated. And yeah, outdoor spaces that are shared, and places like Camas that are shared and that are community and they are togetherness, but somehow it feels like your own, and it feels like you have some ownership over that place, and that everybody who's walked down that track has, yeah, you know, their name written somewhere there, whether that's on the rocks or on the beams upstairs or just simply in the space around it. And the importance of just having places as a young person to just be, and to pause and to just stop and to be away from what is normal for you, breathing different air, looking at different views, again, is a real privilege. And it's something I was so lucky to have all of those summers, but I know that not everybody does have that. And yeah, just will be eternally grateful for having those places and having access to those places. And yeah, I guess also living simply, and the way that Camas lives simply, just like in tune with the natural world, and all of that good stuff, and all of the gardening and the vegetables, and just a basis for plant-based living, I think.
Fantastic.
And yeah, I guess, yeah, everybody makes Camas their own, and I think that's the really wonderful thing about it. So yeah, thank you for all the work that you do. I'll stop talking now.
Thank you so much, Mary and Maeve. I wish we had another hour and a half to carry on, but we really have come to the end of our gathering, and you've just got a glimpse of the stories that are in the book. I know that there are so many more people on the screen. We saw Sandy Brunton for a moment there, and Sandy, you bring such a lot of history to this call, and we need another whole session with you, and Terry and other staff, Hannah and Abby and Dot and Paul and Tor and Mary and Nick and Neil and Brian and another Mary and Thomas and Terry, all these people who've worked at Camas and more that I won't have caught on the screen. Thank you all for all that you do for Camas to keep this place alive and the vision of justice and peace for all alive in these remarkable walls. I'm going to bring Rachel back onto the screen, if that's okay. Rachel, we've romped through the book and we've romped through the stories, and there have been so many memories. Do you have a final word to share before we close the session?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, thank you so much to everyone for these moving stories and inspiring stories and talks that people have given. I was very conscious doing the book of trying to represent as many people as I could. I think we ended up with over 100 people. And what struck me tonight, and as I was doing the research, there's this massive kind of network, this Camas family of, you know, I would get in touch with someone who worked there in the 60s and they'd say, oh, do you know such a body was there in the 50s and, or, you know, in the 80s, you know, such a body in the 70s. And so looking around who's here tonight, I think every generation is represented, and I'm sorry we couldn't get everyone to speak, but I do appreciate that. And the other thing I think which folk touched on, which struck me when I was doing the book, was in 80 years, obviously a lot of things have changed, staff have changed, redevelopment has changed, but this strong kind of passion and ethos remains all the way through, from contributions I got from the 50s and right to the memories that are being made now, really, of the team who are there now. And it's just been a real privilege for me to hold all that. And I just want to say thank you, because it really did feel people were very generous with their contributions, and I appreciated that. And just a quick thank you to Wild Goose Publications as well for all their work on the book. So thanks to everyone who contributed tonight, and everyone who didn't speak but has contributed in their own way. And thank you, Ruth, to you as well.
And thank you. I think the final words of thanks. Thank you, Sandra, Jane, Iona and Neil are all here, the Wild Goose Publications team. So thank you to them. But the final word has to go to you, lovely Rachel, for all that you've done. And I think we've also, is this picture of Abby and Hannah? Is that Abby and Hannah?
It's actually Myrid and Hannah. So,
Myrid and Hannah. Well, yeah, I know that Hannah was here, so we can see them. We know that Hannah has been here. I didn't realize it was Myrid. Anyway, so fantastic that you've brought all these pictures and stories together, Rachel. You are a force of nature. You've been an absolute delight to work with as one of the contributors, but also your persistence, your consistency, your vision, and your real belief in Camas has just been quite remarkable, and in the folks that come through Camas. So thank you so much, Rachel McCann, and good night, friends, and we'll be in touch for the next one of these gatherings. Keep an eye out on the Iona website, there'll be more coming.